Before this video starts, I would just like to say I will be streaming Asphalt 9 this Saturday, June 29th at 4:30 p.m. GMT. I will be doing the LaFerrari special event, multiplayer, and have a lot of fun. Hope to see you there. Hey guys, Furum here, and today I'm going to be testing the Sin R1 in multiplayer in Asphalt 9 at 4 stars. Now previously, I did make a video about this car at 4 stars, but number 1, it was somebody else's races, and number 2, this car has gotten a bit better in the most recent update. As I said in my recent 4GT video, I would like to definitely test some more cars that have gotten buffed or nerfed or have had some changes since my previous videos about them, even if they might be at the same rank. Now I will still prioritize new cars or cars that are at higher ranks, but these are of course still interesting to do, especially when stuff like this happens and you go flying into the air and somehow knock somebody down and narrowly miss landing upon somebody and then they face through you. Yeah, this was a bit of a weird race to start off with, but it worked out pretty well, and as you can see, this car does not have the speed loss problem that it had before. If you have seen my previous video about this car or other people's videos about it, you'll know that it was just the most horribly sluggish thing. It had awful acceleration, it had horrible handling, and it would lose so much speed when taking any turn. The only really good aspect about it was its good nitro efficiency, which even then wasn't like one of the very best, but it was definitely quite above average. But now I can say after this update, this car is actually somewhat enjoyable to drive, which is something I never thought I would say about the Sin R1 in Asphalt 9. It now does not lose so much speed so quickly when cornering, and its drifting now does not feel all that wide. I mean, it feels like it should be heavier than it is now, if that makes any sense at all. It's still not the most agile thing, obviously, as you can tell. It's definitely a lot better than it was before, though, and now I can recommend using this car in multiplayer, which is something I do not think I've done before. Now we're on to our second race, which is on Rome. So let's see how this car does on one of my least favorite Rome tracks for multiplayer, and not only that, a track where it would used to not have done very good at all because of all the turns and things like that. But here, it actually gets going without too much of a problem. We managed to shockwave up here, still flat spinning, and that is actually an interesting and usually quite good strategy to do on some jumps. If you're coming up to a jump, especially in a car that does not have good nitro efficiency, so like in this car it wouldn't be especially useful, but if you're coming to a jump with a full thing of nitro, 360 off the ramp and then double tap nitro, you'll be shockwaving in the air while picking up nitro to keep shockwaving in the air. So that should technically be better in almost any situation than either just flat spinning and doing the double tap nitro normally, the orange nitro, which doesn't speed you up as fast as shockwave, and it should be better than just shockwaving up straight as well, because then you might run out rather quickly if you're not in a car like the Corvette Grand Sport. Speaking of the Corvette Grand Sport, I only need 14 more blueprints in order to max it out because of the current car hunt. However, the 11 more blueprints that I did get for it past 2-star have all been from the one that you get for finishing the race, and then the 10 from the SCG and CN. None have come from any of the packs so far. Here we beat a couple of higher ranked cars, an F12 TDF and an Aventador who was above 3700. Now let's see how the Sin R1 does on the Caribbean, which would have been the track that this car would have done probably the absolute worst on before this update. Now I do want to make something clear. When I say that this car was improved in this update, I don't mean these stats were improved. As far as I know, the stats themselves have stayed exactly the same. It's just that ever since this car came out, it has been worse than the stats made it seem, and I believe what happened was in this update, they made the car's performance be more accurate to what its stats showed. At least that's my understanding of it. I do not know exactly if that's what happened, but yeah. But whatever happened, it's a whole lot better to drive now. The car behind us is the Dodge Viper GTS, which loses less speed around corners, but is a bit slower, and that is why I'm able to pull away from him in the straights, and then he catches up again in the curves. That's generally what happens between cars of these two sorts of stats. And now see, I'm pulling away again on the straights. Once you learn the Caribbean, you will find that it is actually quite a fun track to drive on. I know a lot of people, when it first came out, were sort of upset about it, to say the least, and some people even called for it to be removed, or at least removed from multiplayer. I'm very glad that wasn't the case, because I find it to be quite a fun track now, and I think anybody who plays on it enough and learns some of the right routes will find that it is, in fact, quite a fun track to play on, and you really have to be strategic on it. So we've come in first here, and on that screen you could see see that Legions United has indeed gotten its custom logo, at least for the Windows teams, and I believe they will be coming soon to the Android teams as well, so that's pretty nice. TGL also got their custom logo as well. Now, there is one team on Windows that I'm rather surprised has not gotten a custom logo yet, and that is Pro Team. They are the biggest team on Windows, slightly bigger than Legions United. Actually, I don't know how slight it is, but in any case, they don't have their logo yet, and I just wonder why that hasn't happened. Because TGL is quite a bit of a smaller team from what I know anyway, and they got theirs, so yeah, I'm not exactly sure what's going on with Pro Team, but if you're watching this and in Pro Team, I really do hope you guys get a custom logo soon as well. You really do deserve it, aside from the ballerinas in there. So now we've come into first place by quite a good bit in this Sonar 1, having knocked down that Apollo N earlier in the race, which would probably have been our main competition, because as it turns out, he was actually near 4,000 ranks, so he may very well have been able to beat me otherwise. Now, this route I'm taking up to the left here is one that you probably have seen me take plenty of times, and you've probably seen other people take plenty of times as well, but I kind of wanted to explain it a little more. It is not something you want to do in cars that have really bad nitro efficiency, because you will not be able to shockwave all the way up the hill properly, and it'll end up being slower than going to the right. But if you've got great nitro efficiency, definitely use that route, if you're comfortable with it, of course. That is one thing you definitely need to keep in mind in multiplayer at all times. Just because a route is faster doesn't mean that it's necessarily better for you until you learn it, and things like that you're not comfortable with are definitely best practicing not in multiplayer, because that's what I did. When I first saw people using that route, I could tell it was faster, but I didn't use it in multiplayer because I did not feel comfortable using it, as I figured I might wreck on the windmills or not get shockwave and then it'd be slower or something, so I used it in events whenever I got the chance. And then when I got confident enough that I was going to be able to do it in multiplayer without messing up, like when I did it enough times in events without messing up, then I used it in multiplayer, and it's what I've done ever since. And that has sort of been the case with a lot of other tricks on so many of the tracks. For example, something coming up here that I've started doing sometimes, not all the time, but at least in faster cars with better nitro efficiency, going up this ramp and then shockwaving around here while riding, going up this, and then shockwaving while riding around this turn. It allows you to keep your complete full speed throughout all of that time, providing you have enough nitro to stay in shockwave around all the turns, and it ends up being quite fast in those cars that have higher top speed. I don't know if it's good in this one. I know in slower cars going to the right is still definitely better, but at least it's a good alternate route for faster cars, especially if there's a bunch of people bunched up. There, we did manage to beat a Corvette Grand Sport above 3,900 rank. Now, what I was saying about cars being all bunched up, that is the case when you might very well want to take a route that perhaps could be a bit slower, or just a different route than the one you normally take in order to avoid getting knocked down. Because I've seen so many times, and I've experienced this, where I just go with the pack on the fastest route like everybody does, and then I get knocked down, or something like that, or just something bad happens, and I end up losing more time that way than I would have lost if I'd just gone the other way. Like, for example, wrecking makes you lose at least a few seconds, and that definitely varies based on the car's acceleration and nitro efficiency and other stats like that, but what I'm getting at is that on many alternate routes, they are just about maybe a second or two slower, and they may be worth that slight loss in time if everybody else is going the main way, and then you'll probably see some of them get knocked down and you'll be glad you weren't one of them. By the way, yes, I am still planning to make that updated How to Go Fast in Asphalt 9 video, or videos depending on how I decide to do it. However, they do take quite a long time to plan and get set up, so currently it's looking like the first one will be released sometime next week, because this week I'm quite busy, and I was originally planning to do it this week, but that's not going to happen now. But I've got another interesting Asphalt 8 video coming in just a couple days that I'm sure you guys will enjoy. Speaking of Asphalt 8, thank you so much for the support on the Showdown Explained and Tested video, because that thing got more views quicker than pretty much any other video I've uploaded recently. I really do think it is bringing people back to the game, and I said that in the video, and I still see it now. Here we sort of weirdly go above that P1. Thankfully, we don't get knocked down or have some odd fly high into the air and go to 100 miles per hour thing, and we're able to get through into second place without too much of a problem. In first place, there's a 3,700 rank Porsche 918 Spyder, who I thought would be good competition, but then he just wrecked on Well, I don't even know exactly what. It could have been the truck, it could have been on something before the truck, not entirely sure, but in any case, it allowed us to get ahead, which is pretty nice. Now it's time for my general review about this car. As I've said, it's definitely quite a bit better than it was before. Its top speed is pretty good for Class B, and its acceleration, handling, and drifting are all decent now. Still not the greatest. It still does not feel like the most agile car, because it really isn't, but it's a lot better than it used to be. And the nitro efficiency is very good as always. We shockwave around the final bend and then take the victory. Thank you all for watching. Please like the video if you've enjoyed, and consider subscribing for more Asphalt 9 and Forza Horizon 4 content, and I will see you in my next video. Goodbye!